Hello once again. We're continuing our conversation about Harkness classroom in a mathematics setting. And in this video, I would like to talk about some typical behavior around the Harkness table and something where the teacher should do some addressing when some of those behaviors that I'm going to outline happen. There's only 4 that I've selected for this video, and they are the following. You can see the 4th one is just down below, but we'll get to it. I'll talk about each one of those in detail. So, talking too little or not at all. This one happens often. There's always students, almost always, that exhibit this kind of behavior, and those people who are starting out with Harkness always ask me, okay, so what do I do with the student who simply does not talk, but talks very little? When it comes to assessing their participation, even though they're maybe even excelling in the course, but they're really introverted and they're not speaking up too often. There's some strategies that work with this. I would suggest that a one-on-one conversation should be a good place to start in this kind of situation, where a teacher should just pull the student aside or just talk in the hallway or make an appointment to talk to them about their contributions in the class, and try to encourage to increase those times when the student speaks up. At the same time, that can become quite uncomfortable for the student, because if their nature is not an extroverted kind, they don't really like to be speaking out and speaking up during the conversation, during the discussion. Forcing them to do so is not going to be very organic, which means that they're not going to be producing the true output. They're just going to be saying things for the sake of saying them, and not necessarily because they have something meaningful to contribute. That's not going to be their priority. Their priority will be to, okay, I need to say something, and that will become what's driving their contributions, not the contributions themselves. So I suggest in that kind of situation, what comes up in my classroom, what I typically do is I tell the student that they, first of all, I would like to see more from them, but in a very nice way, to say that just try to be more present, and you will see the increase in your assessment that's going to follow. That's the one thing I tell them. The second thing I tell them is I give them some strategies for that to happen. For example, at the beginning of class when we discuss the homework, have the student come up to the teacher before the class and say, okay, today I would like to begin our conversation. And then the teacher would just know at the beginning of the class to say, okay, so-and-so would like to, they wanted to begin. So why don't we give them attention for the next little while to get us started. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is, I've used in the past, is that I've had students present certain things, certain ideas as introductions at the beginning of the class. And this is where introverted students feel better, because they can go home and prepare. And they feel that they're not put on the spot. They know when they need to present, they know when they need to speak, and they have a chance to present what they are talking about, or to prepare for what they're presenting. And also feel that they know that topic well enough to be able to face questions if there are questions from the audience. That's one type of behavior that the teacher needs to address, because if it's not being addressed, it can become quite problematic, not just for the student, that particular student, but for the group as a whole. The second one is the opposite of the first one. Is talking too much. When somebody is a conversation hogger, when they take up all the attention at the table and they're the ones saying things all over and over again. The danger of that is that typically those kinds of contributions are going to be surface level, because if there isn't really enough time to think about it, they just want to talk. Chances are, not always, I'm not saying every time it's like that, but if chances are it's going to be very surface level contributions. So that's a dangerous game to play, because then the discussion cannot is not able to go deeper into the thinking and connecting and reflecting upon what's being done, but only stay at the surface level. So if that happens, again, one-on-one conversation is a good place to start, to let the student know that they've been really kind of talking too much. So to advise them to watch how much they speak, and let others participate more, and maybe even give them some direction on how to do so. For example, maybe they will be the person who say, well, what about and calling someone else to share their opinion. It doesn't come from the teacher, it comes from their peer, so it's a lot less intrusive. Another strategy that works for such students that talk a lot is to give them some kind of a task, and later on we'll go into tracking of discussion or taking notes. That could be something that a student who talks a lot could fulfill that role. Is somebody who is at the table, who are present at the table, but they're writing things down and not so much contributing verbally to the discussion. The third thing is side conversations, and those are particularly dangerous because if they're not addressed, it breaks the discussion very quickly. And it also has another very significant downturn, is that if it's a side conversation, even if it's on topic, the rest of the class cannot hear them. And that's very problematic, because ideas are just only going to be shared between the 2 or 3 people that are having the side conversation. So my advice would be to stop them immediately and to address them in a polite, nice way, of course. To say that, okay, let's bring it to the table. Let's bring it to the table. Some strategy that I use all the time is that I would say, is there something you would like to tell everybody else? And then it completely shuts it down. Or maybe they do have something to say, and then they address the room. So side conversations are something to really watch for. And number 4 is dialogues versus whole class discussion. Is similar to side conversations, but that's more specific when just 2 people are starting. So there's a discussion happening, and then the point is made by a student, and another student responds, and it just starts going back and forth for a while. I mean, one or two iterations is not a problem, but when it keeps going for a minute or 2 or 3, and the rest of the group is completely turned off because it's only discussion between 2 people, not even a discussion, it's a dialogue now. That is also quite dangerous to have, because that loses the discussion loses its track, and it's no longer a discussion, it's just a dialogue between 2 people, which is not what we want to do. So again, the teacher should interject as soon as that's happening and try to get other people involved, or just say, okay, that's good, we got what you're saying, let's move on to the next point, and so on. So that's what I mean. It kind of relates back to that keeping of the fire scenario that we talked about earlier as a role of a teacher. So you're watching for these 4 things, and you're trying to address them as much as you can, because they're quite, particularly 3 and 4. Although I guess all of them are. They're quite. I wouldn't call them dangerous, but they're affective in a negative way, and that could be very detrimental to the particular discussion you're having, and also to the entire culture of the classroom you're trying to set. So I would recommend paying attention to these 4. And again, as I've said, addressing them pretty quickly, and not letting them escalate to something that can be controlled and needs to be shut down in a less of a polite manner. Hopefully this was useful, and you find these ideas that you can implement. Feel free to send comments and questions. The email will appear in the credits shortly after. Until next time, take care, and bye-bye.